Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. This is a joint webinar between Veeam and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and we have a special guest from IDC. But today's topic is the business value of high availability storage environments from HPE and Veeam. One of the things that Veeam and HPE have been marketing for several years is the concept that our joint solutions are better together. And one of the things that we decided to do was to commission a study from IDC to actually work with our joint customers to try and quantify the true business value of what better together means. So let's get started. My name is Rob Emsley, and I'm the Director of Alliance Product Marketing here at Veeam. And I'm joined today by Patrick Osborne, the Senior Director of Storage Product Management and Marketing at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and also Phil Goodwin, the Research Director at IDC, who will be going into detail about the specific study that we performed. Let's just start by setting it up between myself and Patrick, is that as we look at our joint customers, we found over the years that they have customer challenges that really fall into three distinct areas. The first is that their dependency on data has never been greater than what it currently is today. And the challenges that we find is that many organizations, they tell us that they are often unable to meet the service level agreements that they have with respect to data availability and data recovery. We also find that those same organizations have concerns about whether or not they are protecting all of the data that they need in order to keep the business always on and always available. These availability gaps cause real concerns for customers, and the challenges of not being able to recover are a big issue for many of them. Secondly, resource constraints are an issue. The lack of budget to look after the ever-growing amounts of data, the concerns about the costs of unplanned downtime, and the issues around staff productivity based upon the time that it takes their employees to actually perform recoveries are all challenges for them. And then lastly, the age-old problem of complexity continues to be an issue for many of our clients. They need a single solution that covers their key applications. They have concerns about the legacy solutions that they have installed, and once again, the inability for those solutions to meet their service level agreements. But also, they're combating new threats and the ability to stay updated and ahead of the ability to recover from new issues that they see. So these are all things that are really driving, the requirement for new solutions from ourselves and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. So Patrick, how do we address these challenges together?
So thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. When we're talking about some of these challenges that you very eloquently pointed out in the data-driven enterprise, resource management, and certainly around, I think one of the biggest things our customers deal with today is around complexity. If you take a look at HPE's tagline, we are trying to make hybrid IT simple for customers. It's a bold statement, but through partnerships that we have with our partners like Veeam, we're actually achieving that. So when you take a look at the data-driven enterprise, our customers are looking for more aggressive SLAs, certainly more aggressive RTO and RPOs for their applications, and we're providing that with our joint solutions. So we are able to integrate more advanced granular data recovery capabilities for different types of application types, files, items, whether it's on-prem or off off-prem, eliminating the need for failover. There's this new concept of, I guess, to think about it as a very, very aggressive RTO and RPO of almost zero, so constant data availability. So this is, essentially giving you uptime for your production data at all times, and being able to utilize your backups for, other types of application types, test dev, user acceptance testing, a number of different things you can use your secondary storage with. And one of the phrases that we use, especially in nimble storage, is around closing this app data gap end to end. So we combine our predictive analytics with our flash storage solutions to help customers drive a quicker time to value, and also allow customers to do and focus on more important things in the stack. And we essentially automate using AI a number of things on the support angle, and updates, firmware upgrades. So there's a lot that goes into some of the AI and analytics portion of our platforms that are helping customers close that app data gap end to end. I think some of the key areas around resource management, everyone has that nonlinear growth curve for their data. So we're trying to provide the most effective, cost-effective data storage for our joint solution. We're decreasing unplanned downtime for our systems. I think some of the features that Veeam provides around the ability to check backups, the ability to use those secondary copies for test and dev, are things that our customers utilize, and are some of the banner features of our joint solution together. And then certainly increasing productivity. So automated data integrity checks and scripting to help decrease the burden on the operational staff. And we're essentially able to help customers save an average of 28% reduction in IT staff dedicated to backup and recovery. We're definitely seeing customers moving away from dedicated backup and recovery teams, and I think that shows to the automation and simplicity of our joint solution. And at the end of the day, we're really just trying to ease the burden of management. So single pane of glass by utilizing APIs and integration between the platforms, overcoming some of the complexity you have from some of the legacy storage and data protection solutions. So these are pre-tested, pre-built supply chain integration solutions that enable us to provide solutions for customer from a trusted IT solution provider with HPE and Veeam, and certainly around decreasing the complexity. So we're really trying to overcome some of those legacy solution shortcomings and the complexity. If you go to the next slide, Rob. One of the things that we've shown is that not only do we have great differentiation with the products together, we've essentially brought a very comprehensive and cohesive ecosystem for many different types of storage. So if you see here, we have a number of smaller customers that utilize the HPE ProLiant server platforms for their virtualization needs. We've got customers that use a whole host of different primary storage platforms, all flash 3PAR. We've seen a tremendous growth with all flash on HPE Nimble storage. And then this new category of hyperconverged infrastructure with the HPE SimpliVity 380. So each one of those tools and platforms can be used in different manners, for virtualization, for edge, for remote offices, for core data center, even for hybrid cloud, and the ability to combine those primary platforms with the secondary storage systems that are changing very rapidly. So we have one of the industry best dedupe platforms with HPE Store Once. A lot of folks still utilize tape as the lowest cost tier of storage, and it provides a very secure air gap for customers worried about compliance and security. And then certainly, I think one of the biggest things that's changed the face of secondary storage is around cloud. So what we've done over the last few years is essentially enable customers to choose those different platforms for different workloads, but have an integration plane that spans primary storage, whether that's all flash, server-based, or hyperconverged, through secondary storage in the data center, and then certainly off-premise as well. And if you take a look at some of the timelines that we've delivered this technology in, next slide, Rob, we certainly have a very long and tenured partnership between the two companies. So we've had product integrations going back almost 5 years. So we started off in the market with being able to integrate storage level snapshots with Veeam and backing up from those storage snapshots. It's going to give you very granular recovery points, better RTO, and very efficient VM-based backups. We introduced integration with Store Once, so the deduplication and compression pipeline that we use, as well as encryption on Store Once, is completely integrated with Veeam, enabling secure backups and restores with very good speed and certainly incredible efficiency from a cost perspective. We've had a very long partnership with Nimble as a standalone company, and we continue to innovate in this space, and you'll see some continued product announcements from us jointly in this area throughout the calendar year. So Explorers for storage snapshots, which I know are very popular with the customers, backing up from storage snapshots. This whole concept of what we call a secondary flash array, where you can utilize those backups for application testing in various use cases. So it's really helping customers automate and really drive up efficiency for their development pipeline. And then certainly some of the recent things we've done with 3PAR and snapshot integration, as well as integration with SimpliVity. So this really shows a very long and joint R&D partnership that we've done in addition to go-to-market. So this is an area that gets me really excited. And Rob, I'll hand it back to you to round out some of the integration and partnership section. We can hand it over to the folks at IDC.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Patrick. So yeah, certainly HPE has been, our longest running partnership. Even before we started coding together, we were working on, best practices around availability and data protection, all the way back to, 2011. So this is something that as we go forward, we will continue to develop, unique capabilities, that, address the challenges of our joint customers. As far as the availability of resources, feel free to either go to veeam.com or hpe.com to get more information. But without further ado, let me transition and introduce Phil Goodwin. So both Patrick and I have known Phil for many years, and we've done several projects together. One of the things that Phil brings to us is a long tenure at IDC, and specifically in the data protection space. So it was a natural choice to work with Phil and IDC, to really work with our joint customers to develop, this body of research. So Phil, welcome, and let me hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Rob. It's really nice to be with you guys today, and like you say, to take on a project like this. And as Rob said at the very top of the program, HPE and Veeam approached IDC several months ago to conduct an independent business value study for companies who use both the HPE Enterprise data protection hardware along with the Veeam backup software. And I do want to note out of the gate that IDC does not endorse products or companies, so nothing in here should be considered as an endorsement. But if you go to the next slide there, Rob, we do a fair number of studies in the industry, and I think we're probably well known for those studies and the quantifiable information that we generate. And in this particular case, what we really wanted to do was get to the heart of the matter of what are customers actually experiencing in the field with respect to business value. And business value is not just cost savings, but also to the extent that organizations are able to improve their competitiveness and the ability to generate revenue. So the methodology that we used in this particular case was to select 7 highly qualified customers who particularly used the HPE and Veeam data protection software for more than a year. We wanted organizations who had substantial experience and could get into very detailed analysis of what their experience has been. So this is different than a large survey where we go out to hundreds of customers and kind of compile the results. This is really where we spend a great deal of time with individual customers on the phone. It was entirely between IDC and the customer, so the customer was free to say anything they wanted during that conversation. And it also allowed us to move into more depth and kind of explore things in a way that a survey doesn't allow. We had worldwide participants. We didn't look at any one particular industry. We looked at multiples. But the interesting thing here was that on average, the customers that we talked to had more than 8,000 employees. So these were very large organizations typically. And I think that's important because in many cases, certainly Veeam is well known in the SMB space, but more recently has been working and engaging with very large scale customers, which of course is the sweet spot for HPE. And we wanted to see what those kinds of results would be. So if we go to the next slide. Some of the industry dynamics that we're seeing here, just to kind of set the stage, is from IDC research, nearly 70% of organizations have embarked on a digital transformation project, meaning that it is top of mind for these organizations, and there's a great deal of time, effort, and money being spent in these kind of transformations. And what we're finding is that these organizations are increasingly recognizing the need to become data-centric organizations, and certainly that's probably one of the most common themes we're hearing in the industry these days is digital transformation and data-centric organizations. And it's important to note that when we're talking about data-centric, it means data availability is really critical, because obviously it's pretty tough to be data-centric without having that data available. As Patrick alluded to a little bit earlier, we are seeing a great deal of emphasis on organizations really trying to get to what we've kind of dubbed the race to zero, which is zero RTO and zero RPO, which in business terms means zero downtime with zero data loss. So if we want to move forward, one thing, before we go on, one thing I do want to point out is that when we talk about data-centric, there can be some questions and concerns about that, and what it really means. And what it really means is organizations that recognize that data is their greatest non-human asset. I think humans are still the best asset or the greatest asset. But data is quickly becoming the greatest non-human asset, and its ability to drive faster, more informed business decisions to give those organizations a competitive edge. That's really what data-driven organizations mean. So going on, sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Are you seeing that more and more customers are recognizing that they need to become data-centric? Is it becoming more of the norm than the exception?
I would absolutely say it's more of the norm than the exception. In many cases, people kind of intuitively get that they need to do that, but what's a challenge is to really recognize, what does that look like? What does becoming a data-centric organization mean? How do you then transform to becoming that data-centric organization? So I think as we go through some of the business results and the business value that we've seen here in this case, I think people will start to get a better view of what that looks like from both a cost management standpoint as well as a revenue generation standpoint, cost avoidance, things like that can drive greater data availability and help the organization to be more competitive in the marketplace. So some of the participant facts that we saw and that we gathered during this study began with asking these organizations what their cost of downtime was. And what we found was that the average was $381,000 per hour, and the median was about $150,000 per hour, and that number included both lost revenue as well as lost productivity during that time. Moreover, these organizations had about 6 data loss events per year, and the mean time to recover was about 18.2 hours. I would note that these facts are numbers that organizations experienced prior to implementing the HPE and Veeam solution, and that our study here is really looking at what was it before you implemented HPE and Veeam, and what were the results after HPE and Veeam. So these are kind of the level set that we wanted to go through. A couple other factors here was the average number of IT staff was 459, so obviously these are very large organizations, having approximately 350 applications on average between them, and that these configurations typically included both 3PAR, HPE Store Virtual, Store Once, along with the Veeam availability solution. And the average among the customers that we talked to had a petabyte of data and 62 physical servers under management. So if you want to go to the next slide, please, Rob. This is an economic summary of what we found from the average annual benefit to the organization after they implemented HPE solutions with Veeam. And that average benefit came out to $1.3 million, which broke down among risk mitigation and user productivity benefits being the largest area, IT staff productivity being the second largest, IT infrastructure also being the third, and then the fourth area was business productivity benefits that they received from them. If we go to the next slide, we can dive into those particular results a little bit deeper. So if we look at the infrastructure cost savings of $391,100 per organization, we find that comes out to $7,320 in infrastructure cost savings per 100 users. Now, what users told us was that result was largely from being able to get longer product life, as well as being able to reduce the amount of capacity that they needed for their data protection environments. They also told us that they had greater operational efficiencies in terms of power, space, cooling, all those environmental factors that would go into the infrastructure management. Risk mitigation had a similar story here, but was obviously a much larger number, where we actually came out with $9,311 savings per 100 users. And here the users told us the savings was largely from reduced impact of outages. Remember earlier we were saying the cost of downtime average, the median was $150,000. So if you start to do some of the math in terms of hours of downtime, 18.2 hours per recovery and so forth, you can see that cost savings can add up very, very quickly in the event or through the ability of being able to reduce that downtime and provide better availability. Users also cited more frequent backups, meaning they lost less data and had faster recovery times in the event that they actually did have a data loss. IT staff productivity was largely driven by greater automated operations and the reduced incident management. Fewer incidents of data loss and less time spent recovering from those situations really helped to reduce or to improve staff productivity by $426,600 per organization. Business productivity was driven largely by revenue gains, where we saw $1,054 per 100 users, and greater business agility for those organizations resulted in an impact of $57,200 per organization.
So Phil, can you explain a little bit more of the methodology of the cost per 100 users?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, that's a good question. Because obviously, if you take the number there, 391,000 divided by 100, it doesn't come out to 7320. What we did there, Rob, is the average savings per organization was to take the total savings and divide by the number of organizations, whereas the per 100 users was taking all the total savings and divide it by the number of users across all organizations. The reason we do that comparison of per 100 users is that it makes it a lot easier for other organizations to compare or to anticipate particular results. So organizations vary greatly by industry, by size, by geography, and so on and so forth. But when you get it down to the per 100 users, that makes it a lot more meaningful for other organizations to be able to take that and apply it to their particular situation.
Great,
Does that
thanks.
answer for you, Rob?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. So if you'd take us to the next slide, please. The other side of the coin that we talked about earlier is not just cost savings, and obviously that was where the largest impact was, but also from being able to take that additional time from less downtime, less attention to managing backups and so forth, and see how that improves the organization from a revenue impact as well as unplanned downtime. And here what we found from the respondents, we learned that the total additional revenue per year, average per organization, was about $381,000, and total recognized revenue per year was about $57,000. And per 100 users, that comes out to $1,000 of additional recognized revenue per 100 users. So you can see that this has both significant savings benefits as well as positive impact, which was also found in reduced impact of unplanned downtime, where the total additional revenue per year was about $100,000 per organization, and total recognized revenue at about $14,000. And I would explain that the difference between the additional revenue and the recognized revenue is that we apply about a 15% operating margin assumption on total revenue to arrive at total recognized revenue. And that's how we calculate the impact of that particular element. So for the next slide, Rob. We ask organizations to give us a summary of their availability and reduced risk. And what we found was that there were really 4 key elements that really stood out to us in this particular study. The first was that there was a 78% reduction in unplanned downtime on average across these organizations. So some of these organizations gave us examples where they had gone from an 8 to 10 hour recovery time and were able to reduce it down to 15 minutes. So that has impacts for both data availability, but also for that cost of downtime that we discussed earlier. We also found from these organizations that they averaged a 93% shorter recovery window. And in some cases, organizations gave us examples of being able to recover a full server in 10 minutes, whereas previously it had taken several hours. There was 89% more backups, taking 83% less time on average, where backups which had previously run from hours were able to reduce down to around 15 minutes, were some of the actual examples given to us by these customers. And we also found that they were able to keep data on-premise 5 times longer, in one case being able to extend the retention from 1 week to 60 days before moving the data offsite to archive. And a lot of that was because of the efficiency of the underlying HPE infrastructure that was able to house more data in less physical capacity, as well as the Veeam software being able to manage that data and to be able to find the data faster and recover it more quickly. So on the next slide, Rob, please. Some availability metrics that we found was that the user impact from data loss actually reduced 96% on average. So this was a percent improvement. So going, that's not quite nearly eliminating it, but it's pretty close to nearly eliminating the user impact of data loss. Shorter recovery windows was a 93% improvement in the recovery window, again, recovering it faster. The number of backups performed per year was actually improved by 89%, meaning fewer failures and more frequent backups. Shorter backup windows were found in 83% of the cases, and lower user impact of unplanned downtime was down 78%. So you can see across all of these availability metrics, there was a substantial improvement found by these organizations compared to when they compared the prior solution that they had to the combined HPE and Veeam solution. Next slide, please. Staff efficiency is another area that we look at, and I want to point out here that in many cases, people think that organizations are able to reduce their staff. Our experience is that's not really true. What we find is that in, I think, around 92% of cases, organizations actually redeploy those people to other projects and are able to move them away from the daily triage of backup, failure, recovery, and so forth. And that's what we found in this particular case as well. What we found in terms of the number of full-time equivalents per organization before HPE and Veeam went from 7.2 down to 5.2 afterwards. So they were able to redeploy 2 full-time people to other projects and to more important activities. Total savings of staff time per 100 users was 71 hours per year, almost 2 weeks in that time. And the value of that staff time was about $205,000. What the participants cited in giving these numbers is that they were able to substantially increase the automation and scripting that they had with the HPE infrastructure and the Veeam software to reduce the staff manual labor needed to carry out day-to-day activities. They also had fewer issues, fewer backup failures, fewer restore failures, and they had faster response during hardware failures, meaning their staff needed to spend less time on that, as well as more efficient hardware from the HPE side, which led to less staff time and management on maintenance. Next slide, please. We then took those costs and summarized them to show what the example would be over a 5-year period before HPE and after HPE. And what we found was the costs that these customers reported to us decreased from about $166,000 per year to only $86,000 per year related to their backup operations. So that's a 48% savings or reduction in those costs. And we included both user productivity, IT staff time costs, and IT infrastructure costs in those calculations to add up to the grand total. Next slide, please, Rob. So really the bottom line here that we found is that the average annual benefit, as I said at the very beginning, was about $1.39 million per year, a very substantial savings. And much of that was driven by a reduced cost of downtime and the multiplier that you see when you calculate downtime times the cost of that downtime. Came out to a $391,000 infrastructure cost savings, plus an additional $1,327 of revenue per user per year. We had a 28% reduction in IT staff time dedicated to backup and recovery, which came out to 2 full-time equivalents being able to be redeployed to other activities. a 96% reduction in data loss, which is pretty critical when you think of having to go and become a data-centric organization. That number is absolutely critical. And then, of course, a 48% lower 5-year cost of operations. I would also point out that for users who want to be able to, or any participants here who would like to find out more about this particular study, you can find that study posted on both the HPE and the Veeam websites to give you full details. So with that, one more slide change, Rob, and I will turn it back over to you, and welcome to take questions if we have any from the audience or whatever from here on out.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Phil. So Patrick, interested in whether or not you have any additional things to add or questions to ask Phil?
Yeah. So I mean, I think a couple of things that we know are changing in the market is certainly there's a lot of dynamics around secondary storage, in terms of the choices of PBBAs versus software versus the cloud. And I don't know if you have any advice for the listeners out there in terms of the way you see the market shifting and maybe some trends that people should be aware of as they take a look at what their budget's going to be in FY18 and for calendar year 19 in terms of planning and driving new architectures into their data center. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that and the changing landscape of secondary storage.
Yeah, sure. There are a couple of interesting trends that we're seeing in that regard, Patrick. One of them is that we are seeing much more of a trend towards the integrated devices, especially those that can provide a hybrid cloud or a multi-cloud type of capability. Two of the, or I should say, three of the fastest growing markets for data protection are backup as a service, archive as a service, and disaster recovery as a service. And those markets are growing at more than 20% per year right now. So when we find a lot of organizations moving towards the cloud, in many cases, the tip of the spear for them is moving their data protection environment to the cloud, especially as they deploy cloud native applications as well as SaaS applications, being able to back up that data in the cloud or really back up that data wherever it happens to be, but with the realization that it's rapidly shifting toward the cloud.
Great, thanks.
So one question probably for you and I, Patrick, from Jerry, is he's interested to know whether or not both people that work for HPE and people that work for Veeam have knowledge about the integration and requirements to integrate our joint solutions. Certainly from my side, one of the things that we did recently with HPE is HPE became a global reseller of Veeam. So we've been increasing the joint knowledge of both the Veeam system engineers as well as the HPE system engineers as far as their ability to architect the joint solutions and maximize the capabilities that you can actually achieve when you integrate Veeam Availability Suite with either 3PAR Store Serve or HPE Nimble Storage or HPE Store Once. Certainly, that's always work in progress. There's a number of configuration guides that we have available, but Jerry, we can reach out to you, outside of the webinar and follow up with you. But Patrick, be interested in your perspective on access to resources to help our customers.
Yeah, so there's a couple threads on that, and I think there's certainly still an infancy in the partnership in terms of how we go to market. We've been a global reseller for about a year, and that continues to expand into from Americas into Europe as well as into Asia Pacific right now. We do have some joint labs that we've invested in to do both testing and validation as well as actual R&D work. So there's a lot of things that we work on together in terms of how to optimize the data path. So how can we have products like store once and in our deduplication pipeline work better with the Veeam, we call it content awareness, so the Veeam data streams. There's a number of things we do in terms of, certainly product integration itself with platforms like 3PAR and Nimble, as well as, we just started to kick off some work streams with SimpliVity. So I think that's pretty healthy. And then, we continue to train the channel and our certainly our SEs, our solution architects and systems engineers out in the field to help deliver the solution. I think one of the key areas that we're investing in this year is around the support experience. So we're actually doing some investigation work and understanding how we can have a tighter support experience for our joint customers. So a competency center for that that includes not just our two products, but seeing if we can also leverage some capabilities around the cloud and some of the vendors that provide those targets in the cloud that we both partner with. So to essentially double down on the secondary storage being on-prem and off-prem, and having HPE infrastructure and Veeam as an orchestration and data plane, interacting with those on-prem and off-prem capabilities and providing a joint support experience for that. So I think from our perspective, we understand that there's a lot of customers that are transacting both HPE systems and Veeam software together. We literally have at this point thousands of joint customers, and we're trying to provide certainly a better support experience. And I think from a future vision standpoint, that's just beyond this year. I think if we could start to provide a whole number of things in the technology standpoint around analytics. So we have this rich set of analytics that we use on platforms like 3PAR and Nimble, and being able to use those to automate the secondary storage experience, right? To further, take cost out of people and processes. So if you see something like VMs, running out of memory, or the signatures of possibly even a ransomware IO profile, that you can go and take automated steps between our products together to ensure the fact that we've got snapshots or an air gap backup, or the capability to even move workloads in the case of some certain things that happen. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, around automation that we will deliver to the market over the midterm, which I think would be a huge success for us, and and it would definitely be a huge impact for our customers.
Great, thanks, Patrick. So certainly, as we moved through 2018, both at Veeam customer events and HPE customer events, and the opportunities to interact with our sales teams and more importantly, our system engineers and our solutions architects will certainly be available. And we'll continue to build out content about how to implement the solutions together. One of the things that we certainly pride ourselves on is the ability to integrate with HPE storage platforms. Is a fairly straightforward process. Built into the management interfaces of Veeam Availability Suite. And it's certainly something which continues to strive to be a simple and straightforward process in order to maintain the overall value. Just one question for you, Phil. Clearly, one of the areas of focus for us is has been integration with primary storage, both from an aid to backup performance, an aid to recovery. But one of the areas that we're starting to really put some focus on is how our integration with storage can really allow our customers to leverage the data that they have, and the concept of the ability to run data labs, on-demand sandboxes. Do you feel that the integration with storage is being looked at as going beyond aiding with data protection, and there's more of an expectation for leveraging data, especially as you described, in this data-centric world?
Yeah, there really is, because what we're finding is really primary use cases. It used to be that data protection was replication and snapshots and things like that, and pretty much what it was used for, including the backup data sets. But now what we're finding is organizations want to leverage that data for analytics, for test dev, for staging, and as well as data protection. So those are kind of the four key use cases that we find in there. And we are seeing a trend towards tighter and tighter integration of data protection into the storage stack, to where those kinds of functions are really no longer discrete activities, but really part of a continuum, where data availability for recovery purposes, as well as data availability for analysis or other things, are really very much similar and serve the same function.
Fantastic. I mean, certainly one of the things, Patrick, that is a huge focus for HPE is really making hybrid IT a reality. And certainly when you describe the portfolio from on-premises to cloud and everything in between, that's certainly a big focus of the overall portfolio. Do you have any sort of final comments with regards to what you're seeing with respect to hybrid IT adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we've, from a portfolio perspective, most of the RFIs and the RFPs that we're involved in for customers are, requiring hybrid platforms right from the get-go. So if you don't have a solution in that area, you're not in the game. But on the other hand, we are seeing a number of, especially larger customers, taking a look at solutions that help them control cost in the cloud. So we've had a couple of acquisitions that we did last year at HPE. One was called Cloud Cruiser, and the second one was Cloud Technology Partner. So Cloud Cruiser allows us to, measure and meter, and allows us to provide our on-prem products as, complete consumption models. So for the customers who really like that consumption, OpEx-based, economic model, we can deliver that, with our products, either, point products or with entire solution stacks. And with the Cloud Technology Partners, they have a number of advisory services to sort of help customers take a look at, which workloads are appropriate for where, and they have a number of cost models too, to understand how to keep your costs down. We've seen a number of large customers actually claw back applications and deployments from the cloud to on-prem for cost reasons. So I think all these things are a part of a very large toolbox for our customers, and they can all be used for good or for evil. I think one of the things that we're doing with HPE Point Next and all of our advisory services is to help our customers, make those transitions, choose where the best spot for those applications lie, and essentially help customers cost optimize where those applications run, and for how long and for when. So from our perspective, there's a lot of components to making hybrid IT simple, and it starts with products, really good products, and definitely ends with advisory services and helping our customers to be successful in the space.
Great, thanks for that. So, I'm just looking at, any other questions that have come in. Certainly, we will send a follow-up email to everyone containing both the recording link and the slides for the webinar. So, be on the lookout for that. So if there's no more questions, it just leaves me to say a thank you to Patrick for joining us today, and more importantly, to say an extra special thank you to Phil and the team at IDC for both joining us today and also for conducting, this research, which, for us is a very, critical element to support, our Veeam and HPE partnership. Not so much from a technical perspective, but really to explain, as I said earlier, how the Veeam and HPE solutions, are better together. And I think it's something that, from our perspective, is much more of the business as usual for the way that we go to market. The ecosystem that HPE is part of is critically important for our ability to drive availability for the always-on enterprise. So with that, I'll say thank you for everybody that's joined us, and have a good rest of the day, and goodbye.